It's story time with Miss Dina. Today's story is called When the Monkeys Came Back. What do you think? Get the glare off. What do you think this story is about? Oh, okay. Well, let's read and find out. When the monkeys came back. When Dona Marta was a little girl, the valley was a peaceful place. Children giggled as they chased each other between rows of tall corn. Fathers whistled as they dug in the gardens. Mothers hummed softly as they wrapped black beans and cornmeal in banana leaves to cook. There was one old road in the valley, but it was an ox cart road, an open place for meeting friends or cousins, a nice place for walking, a sunny place for catching lizards. There weren't any cars at all. The valley was a quiet place, except when the monkeys called. Every morning and every evening, for as long as anyone could remember, the monkeys announced the changing of night into day, the changing of day into night. At dawn, they would howl and bark to one another, and the noise they made was like thunder in the trees. At dusk, they would hoot and scream, and each leaf and each blade of grass would tremble from the sound. So dawn is the period in the morning just before the sun comes up, or sunrise. And dusk is the period just before the sun goes down. So just before it becomes night, we call that dusk. One day, a car chugged and spluttered up the old road. After that, more cars came. Not many at first, for the road was an ox road, not a car road. Marta was afraid of cars. The sound and smell made her hide behind her mother's skirt. More and more cars came, and trucks, and more noise. Before long, it wasn't safe to walk down the middle of the road, to stand and talk, to chase the quick lizards. Still, the monkeys shouted from the trees, drowning out all the new noises for a few moments each day, hooting to one another as they always had, waking up the world in the morning, calling the workers home from the fields at night. Why do you think that there's so many more cars and trucks now? Oh, okay. Let's keep reading and find out why there's more cars and trucks. And why do you think Marta was afraid of cars? Yeah. Should you be afraid of cars? Yeah, they could hurt you. The rains came and went, and Marta's dress grew short. And one day, some men from the city came to Marta's house. Do you think the dress grew short? Or do you think Marta grew and the dress became too small? They offered her father a lot of money, enough to buy 6 cows and a brand new dress for Marta, and asked to cut down some trees on the side of the mountain. Marta's father agreed, and from that day on, the forest began to disappear. Did the forest disappear, or what was making the forest disappear? Yeah, the men. They were cutting down the trees. And I think we talked about, yes, in another video, we talked about what happens to trees. We talked about some things that harm trees, didn't we? And we talked about what happens if trees get harmed It takes away a lot of homes for a lot of different animals, doesn't it? Because we learned about different animals that live in trees. Well, remember that monkeys and frogs were some of the animals that we talked about that live in trees. So think about that as we continue reading the story. At first, it was just a few trees. The lumbermen cut down only the biggest trees, the ones with hanging vines. The monkeys didn't seem to mind. They howled and barked and scolded just as before. But 5 years later, when there were only 24 trees left in the forest, the monkeys went away. Oh no. Why do you think they went away? Yeah. Marta didn't know where the monkeys went. One night, just as the sun slipped behind the hills, the monkeys shrieked and hooted and cried louder than ever before. Some said it was because of the full moon. Others said the rainy season was near, but the next morning the valley was as silent as a stone. Over the next several years, the last of the trees were cut down. What had once been a forest was now covered with stumps and tangled brush. There were a few birds, but no monkeys. Most people forgot about the monkeys. They had roosters to wake them up in the morning, lamps to work by at night. But Marta didn't forget. When she was 15 years old, Marta married Emilio. Emilio worked for Marta's father, and when her father died, he left his farm to Marta and Emilio. "You have a lot of land now," said Marta one day. "I would like to have some of it for myself." Emilio laughed out loud because in those days women did not own land. "Soon we will have a family to feed," said Emilio. "After I plant corn and beans and squash, there will be nothing left over to give you. The rest of the land belongs to the cows." "What about the land on the side of the mountain?" asked Marta. "There are too many stumps for a garden, and it is too steep for cows." "That's true," agreed Emilio, and thought it was against the custom he gave. And though it went against the custom, he gave the land on the side of the mountain to Marta. "What are you going to do with your land?" asked Emilio. "I'm going to bring back the forest," said Marta, and that's what she did. So what do you think she meant by bring back the forest? What do you think she's going to do? Okay, let's find out. Marta planted trees from the foot of the mountain to as far as she could climb. Down here at the bottom, that's called the foot of the mountain. When the sun baked the ground in dry season, she hauled buckets of water to the trees. When the hard rains washed the little trees from the soil, she gently replanted them. Wow, sounds like a lot of hard work. Year after year, Marta took care of the trees. In the next 15 years, she gave birth to 11 children. Each child learned to plant and tend trees. Year after year, Marta's children grew tall, and so did the trees. "Coffee grows well on a mountain," Emilio would tease. "Maybe you could plant coffee on your land." But Marta didn't listen. She didn't change her mind, and the forest came back. So did she succeed at what she was trying to do? Partly. Let's see what else. Many more years passed. The trees grew higher and higher. Marta's children grew up and had children of their own. Emilio died and left the farm to Marta and her sons. One day, old Dona Marta took a walk along the road in the warm sunshine. The children greeted her as she passed. "Good morning, tree lady," they said. "Good morning," answered Dona Marta with a wink and an old smile. She leaned on her stick and stared across the valley. So remember, when our story started, Marta was a little girl. Now she's a grown-up woman and she's a grandma. Yeah, so when our story began, she was just a little girl. Now she's a grandma. Her trees touched the sky. Thick vines wrapped around their trunks. Birds of every color filled their branches. Now wherever they dropped their seeds, new trees would grow. The valley was bright with squash and corn and beans, but the side of the mountain was a deep, dark green, forest green. Dona Marta's work was finished. All the birds again. They have homes. One night, Dona Marta couldn't sleep. As she lay in bed, she listened to the sounds of insects, the twittering of the night birds. Out her little window, she watched the stars trail across the black sky. She watched the moon shadow shift and change in her room. As dawn approached, she heard the roosters begin to crow, and then she heard another sound. What sound do you think she heard? You think? Let's read and find out. At first, it sounded like the barking of dogs, but soon the barking turned into howling, the howling turned into shrieks, the shrieks into shouts, and every leaf and every blade of grass trembled with the sound. Dona Marta hobbled to the window and leaned out. The dark air thundered with the sound of monkeys hooting, howling, screaming from the treetops, waking up the whole world once again. Dona Marta closed her eyes, smiled a wrinkled smile, and listened to the music she had missed for 56 long years. Every morning now, old Dona Marta wakes up to the barking and scolding of the monkeys. Every evening she waits for them to gather in the trees to shriek and howl and say good night. For a few moments each morning and evening, the sound of the monkeys drowns out all the other sounds in the valley. For a few moments each day, it's as if nothing had ever changed. The end. So, what was the problem in this story? What was the first problem? The monkeys were making a lot of noise, right? And along came a couple of men, and what did they want? They paid Marta's father. Yeah, they wanted the trees. So slowly they began cutting the trees, and little by little, the forest disappeared, and then there were no trees at all. So that became a problem for the monkeys, right? So the monkeys had to leave, right? So the monkeys left, and Marta grew up, and she wanted the monkeys to come back. But in order to do that, what needed to happen? Yeah, the forest had to come back. So how did she start to get the forest back? Yes, she started by planting trees. Yes. So she started and planted little itty bitty baby trees, and there would be a drought. Do you remember what drought is? We talked about it in one of our other books. Yes, that means when there's not enough water. That's a drought. So she would water the plants, the trees, when there was a drought. And sometimes there would be too much rain and would cause the trees to slide. So she had to replant the trees. So she had a lot of hard work to do. But eventually the trees got big enough that they didn't move and they could survive. And the forest came back, didn't it? So she just kept planting and planting, and she had children and they learned how to plant. So there was lots of trees, okay? And so finally, once the forest grew back, what happened? Yes, the monkeys finally came back, and she was very happy. So she missed the sound, even though they were loud for a few moments in the morning and a few moments in the dusk. she missed that sound, and the monkeys were able to come home because of her. So, would you call this woman a hero? Yeah, I would, because that took a lot of effort to do that and to save a population of monkeys. So she gave them their homes back, and everybody was happy. So I hope you enjoyed this story of when the monkeys came back. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.